Well, joining me now, former CKE Restaurant CEO and Heritage Foundation visiting fellow Andy Puzder and Patrice Onwuka of the Independent Women's Forum. Great to see you both on Tough News. Andy, I'm going to start with you. We're looking at $5 a gallon right now, gas, probably by the end of this month. Do we get to $6 by the end of the summer? And what does that mean if we get to a national average $6 a gallon in gas, Andy?
I think we'll be lucky to be at $6 a gallon by the end of the summer. I think it could well be much higher. What it means politically is an extremely difficult lift for the Democrats come November. And what it means for American families is fewer trips, less money to spend on things that they would prefer to get for their families, for their children and other family members, and just a very tough time for the American people because of energy policies that really are driving up the cost of gas. And we've got an administration that just can't admit it's causing the problem.
Patrice, I want to talk about families here for a second, because when you're talking about food, when you're talking about gas, it's families who get hit. And you look at those pessimism numbers for a second. 83% of Americans in this Wall Street Journal poll say the economy is in poor shape or in not so good shape. That's an astounding number. Patrice, talk about what this means for families, because when it comes to gas, when it comes to food, that's not a luxury. That's not a choice. It's not like you cut out dinner for people. It's not like you cut out taking your kids to their activities. And if you do, boy, that sounds like a massive reduction in quality of life that directly affects office holders.
Absolutely, Brian. I mean, you're talking about price inelastic things, you know, food, gas. You have to take your kids to school. You have to get to work to be able to pay the bills. And so the pressure on the American family budget is higher than I think in recent history. It's so ironic, though, that President Biden in his Wall Street Journal op-ed last week talked about, you know, this being right now Americans are feeling the most comfortable than they have since the data was collected. Well, that was 7 months ago when inflation was still about 5%. We're now tracking at 8.3%, and this Friday we may find that we've hit a new 40-year high. So absolutely, American families are feeling it. And those feeling it the hardest are those on fixed budgets, the elderly, those who are getting public assistance. They can't afford, you know, paying more for milk and more for gasoline because, again, they don't have a choice of alternatives for those goods.
Let's just be very clear. It's those at the bottom in this economy, the Biden economy, who are getting hit the hardest. Andy, I want to talk a little bit about the number we're going to see on Friday. So we're going to get a new inflation number on Friday. Some are saying it's going to be a new 40-year high. My sense is that number could come in just shy of the highs that we've seen. And I think that means the Biden administration starts to declare victory on inflation. Say we come in at 7.9%, 8%. But of course, that is a total misreading of where we actually are in inflation, because now we're talking about inflation this year built on the inflation we saw last year. Talk, Andy, about the number you expect to see, how you think it's going to be spun, and what it actually means for people.
Well, I think if you're going to look at the metric that includes food and energy costs, and the Fed prefers a metric that doesn't include food and energy costs. But if you look at the one that does include food and energy, I think you're going to see an increase because we've seen both increase over the past month from where they were in the prior month. So I think we're going to see an increase. However, it really, we're talking about now, you know, you and I talk about the numbers, Brian, and we can, you know, we go on various shows and discuss the numbers. The reality is the American people aren't feeling a number. They're feeling this incredible pressure because their wages haven't kept up with inflation, and inflation continues to surge. They see it at the gas pump. They see it in the grocery store. It really isn't going to matter much to them what that number is, and it isn't going to matter much if President Biden is out there declaring victory. What's going to matter is what that check looks like when they check out at the grocery store, or what the bill looks like when they have to pay at the gas pump. And I think that's going to continue to get worse. I really don't. The policies this administration has really don't address the problem of inflation. They address excuses for inflation. They could address it. They could enact some supply side policies, get supply up to meet demand and get inflation down, but they're just not capable of doing that.
It's such a good point about the number. 8% means nothing. 8% means nothing to people because none of the things that families depend on and buy have gone up by 8%. They've gone up by double digits. So forget about the 8% number in some ways. But Patrice, I want to talk about the messaging for a second because you've got the Biden administration this month saying, we're going to get out there and tell our story. We're going to tell our story on the economy. We're going to make the case. Patrice, the problem, I think, is that they're more focused on their story than they are on the reality. How do you think that's going to play out in November? Are we going to see the kind of landslide that so many are predicting because of the inflation issue and the messaging that the Biden administration has attempted on it?
Well, if we look at current polling and the president's approval ratings, things portend very badly for the party in power right now. Now, we still have a number of months and things could turn around. If perchance inflation does start to ease significantly going into October, then I think that's what Americans will remember. But, I agree with Andy. I don't see inflation slowing down significantly at all. And people will feel this pain right now. The administration feels like they have a messaging problem. They don't have a messaging problem. They have a policy problem. Their policies have directly added points to the inflation rate that we're seeing right now. Until they acknowledge that and then stop scapegoating everyone from, price gouging oil companies to meat packers, and Putin and everything else, and really say, okay, what have we done wrong? What do we need to stop doing? And what do we need to start doing? Perhaps even signaling to the energy industry the war on you is over, then nothing is really going to change.
It's a problem for America that this administration thinks that inflation is a messaging problem because it's much, much more than that. We got to leave it there, Andy and Patrice. Always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Well,